Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Theodora Modise. I'm the coordinator for events for the University of Johannesburg Library. I welcome you all to this discussion, and I hope you will all enjoy it. I'm now going to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Habib Noorbhai, and the topic for today is Humanitarianism in the 21st century. How can South Africa thrive? Dr. Habib, who is a former Mr. South Africa in 2017, is also a senior lecturer in sports science at the University of Johannesburg. He completed a BA in sport psychology at the University of Johannesburg, an honors in biokinetics at UKZN, MPhil in biokinetics at UCT, and a PhD in exercise science at UCT. In 2013, he was among South Africa's 100 brightest young minds, and in 2015, he was nominated among Mail and Guardian's top 200 young South Africans. He was also included in Fast Company South Africa's top 30 creative people in business for 2017. In 2018, he was inducted as a Golden Key International Honorary member at UCT. Dr. Habib has also been featured on a variety of television shows, both as a professional and as Mr. South Africa. Some of these included Top Billing, Morning Expresso, eNCA, and SABC News. He's also a frequent expert guest on Cape Talk and Radio702, discussing relevant topics on sports science, health, and community engagement. Dr. Habib frequently contributes to making a difference in the areas of health, education, and sport. He can be followed at Habib Noorbhai. Welcome, Dr. Habib.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction, Theo. I greatly appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone else who has joined into the session. And I really hope it will be useful to you.
Okay. I'm now handing over to Zazi. Zazi Molo is the client relations lead at the speaker's firm. Zazi, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Theo. Thank you for allowing us to have an opportunity to be able to hold these conversations and to also be able to partner into what are the conversations that we are putting across into our people, and to ensure that even though we are social distancing, but we're not stopping the conversations, because it is through the conversations that we're able to empower and as well as to equip each other.
Thank you, Zazi. I will now hand over to Dr. Habib to start with the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Theo, and thank you very much, Zaz. I greatly appreciate this collaborative effort. So I'm not going to make this presentation too long, but for me, my experiences has largely been within the humanitarian context. And I think now more than ever, with regards to the contextual challenges that we're having at the moment within South Africa with this pandemic, I wanted to frame a question of how we can use the essence of humanitarianism to really thrive within the context of what South Africa is going through. Recently, we've seen in the news that towards the last quarter of 2019, the unemployment rate was at 29.1%. And we are expecting it now to grow to 40% or more if this pandemic carries on to be a bit of an issue. So in terms of humanitarianism, it's bridging the gap between not just economic sustainability, but also in terms of the challenges in eradicating it. So mainly the triple E's in terms of unemployment, economical challenges, and equity or equality. So I'm going to start with the presentation. And if you go onto Google and if you search for the word humanitarianism, you're going to find more than 3 million results that explains what it is. And very simply, Google defines it as the promotion of human welfare. Now, the reason why I bring the future trend of the future of work is because we as South Africa, knowing the socioeconomic dynamic and the challenge that we have, it's important to see how we can position ourselves in a context where this kind of trend, which is really growing massively around the world, can start to grow massively within South Africa. And if the University of Johannesburg has a mandate for the fourth industrial revolution, then the future trends of work certainly fits in line with that mandate. Okay, so this is a demographic from Upwork, which talks about freelancing in America. And this report was at the end of 2017. And they predict by the year 2027 that a vast majority of workers will be freelancing by 2027. So as you can see here, that there's an increase of freelance workers from 2017 over the decade going to 86.5 million workers. And that's almost a third of America's population. At the moment, they are starting to see a decline of non-freelance workers going down towards 83.4 million. At the moment, we see that America has really been hit by this pandemic within America, and they are now at 1 million cases out of the 3 million odd cases currently around the world, which is about 33% of their cases. And you have to question that if they didn't have freelance work earlier, that their cases could have probably been increased to 1.5 million. And the unemployment numbers would have been even worse than what it already is. And that's because freelance work has given them this opportunity and this rise to see a different types of paradigm in the way we work and in the way we live. So this is just something that I wanted to put forward to you in terms of the gig economy, and that the freelance workforce is really increasing. And I think now with this pandemic that we're facing, it's going to provide further impetus for how we can still work remotely and at home. Although there are a number of challenges that we will experience because we take human contact for granted, and certain things that can be done with human contact are a lot more efficient. But we're going to see that through this pandemic of how it is possible to work from home, and where certain practicals or certain things that need to be done in person can still be arranged. So my takeaway message, to cut to the point from this lecture, if there's one thing that you want to take away from this lecture, is where do you position 5% of your day? Now, 5% of your day, and if you really calculate it, is 1 hour, 12 minutes, okay? And all it takes is to provide an hour and 12 minutes of humanitarian work to someone else except from yourself. So it may be students, it may be your fellow colleagues, it may be someone outside of your work context, it can be anyone except from yourself. How do you position that hour and 12 minutes to focus on making a difference in various facets of industry? And that's the basis of this presentation, is how we can maximize 5% of our day, whether we are working, whether we're not working, in any context, in any socioeconomic class. How can we still use 5% to really make a difference in society? So these are the main challenges which are needing to be addressed in the world, but not just in Africa. So we have a number of public healthcare challenges. We have a pandemic aside from coronavirus, which is also known as physical inactivity and nutrition. That in itself has been a pandemic for a number of years, where we've seen that the number of people who are physically inactive are growing. 12 European, 5 US American and Canadian, 8 Latin American, and 14 Africans. Of that, 80 out of 100 would be living in substandard housing, 24 out of 100 would not have any electricity, 67 out of 100 would be unable to read, and only 1 out of 100 would have a college education. And 50 out of 100 would be malnourished, and 1 dying of starvation. Furthermore, 33 would be without access to a safe water supply, 1 out of 100 would have HIV, 1 out of 100 would be near birth, 2 out of 100 would be near birth, 1 out of 100 would be near death, 10 out of 100 people who would have access to the internet. So from these devastating stats that you can see, and although it's from 2009, it's really growing. And the reason why I'm showing you these challenges is because how can we translate it now from a South African perspective? So this question here is, why do we have 30 million South Africans who are trapped in poverty, even on a national minimum wage? That's a key question. Out of the 60 million odd people that we have in South Africa, almost 50% are struggling in terms of poverty. So although the stats may not show you what the absolute unemployment rate is, or the absolute poverty level is, even those people with the national minimum wage, nearly half of our country are struggling. And through this pandemic, we're going to have more than half of the country struggling. Okay. So if we look here, this is different types of household incomes according to Business Tech. So household G has an average household income of 12,500, whereas household A is more than 2,000. The question is, how do they live on that? All right, you're feeding a family of 4, how do you really live on that? And that's really a dire concern. So the question is that poverty is worsening. You cannot disconnect rising poverty levels from the economy. The economy is driving and deepening poverty. And with this pandemic, it's going to be deepening poverty even more. So we really need to be cognizant of what's actually happening right now. Then further, with regards to the number of people living in South Africa by population group, we can see that the African Black population are the most vulnerable group, 28 million, which accounts to about 64% of their population. And as we go down, we can see the rest of the population groups as well. So we have approximately 30 million people living in poverty, and that has been approximated at 55% of the population group. After this pandemic, it's going to go even higher, and it's a dire concern. Okay. In 2015, 66.8% of children lived in poverty, up from 63% in 2011. The age group with the lowest levels of poverty were people aged between 45 and 54, which was at 42.2%. So here we can see children between the ages of 0 and 17 who are under 18 living in poverty. That's 13 million, which means the other 17 or 18 million are adults. But the other 40% are those who are under the age of 18. Then this was a report that was published by Stats South Africa, and it was a victims of crime survey of 2017 and 2018. I don't have the latest results with me yet. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is to give you a context of where we are from a perspective within South Africa. And this shows the number of incidents of household and individual crimes between 2013 and 2018. And it shows you the different provinces in this graph over here, and then it shows you the different years. And what we can see from 2013 right up till 2018 is that we've had a decrease from 2013 going down to 2018, which was a positive sign. And all of a sudden, there was a slight increase. And that's the turning point here. That's the real turning point. What happened in 2016 or 2017 for us to notice the sudden increase in crimes that had occurred? Now, at the moment, we've seen a decreased amount of homicide, murder, rape, etc., because of lockdown and because of the pandemic. But even after the lockdown has been lifted, we are going to see a continuous rise again, which is going to bring us up to this number of 10. And that's a concern that we need to paint into our minds. The reason why I'm presenting these devastating stats to you is to give you a context and a richer understanding of where we are as a nation and what we really need to do through an institution such as humanitarianism. Okay. In addition to that, they showed the comparison of distribution of household crime between 2016 and 2018, and the percentage distribution of household perceptions of why perpetrators commit crime. Now, some thought that maybe it's because of drug-related need, which was about 47.8%, a real need, greed, 8.1%, and other reasons, 18.4%. Okay. When we go over here, we see that a vast majority of the crimes that were administered is housebreaking or burglary. Okay. So aside from the majority of the reasons being drug-related need, it's also for real need. And now what we're going to see is that so many people are diving and deepening the poverty and going into the poverty area. There's going to be more housebreaking and there's going to be more burglaries. There's actually going to be more looting as well. Okay, because people are going to be in a situation of need and a situation of desperation. And then this graph shows the unemployment rates and positions. So what we can see here is the official unemployment rate, which was 27.2%, which was a point change from quarter to quarter. And then this was an expanded one. So between 27 and 37, towards the end of last year, we had a 29.9% unemployment rate. This shows the people that were unemployed in Q2 of 2018, which was 6.1 million. And then this graph shows the people that were unemployed in Q2 in 2018. So between this, it was roughly around 7.5 to 8 million of people who were unemployed in South Africa during the 2018 Q2 cycle. The issue is that now in 2020, we're going to see the unemployment rate expanding more than 29%, which means that the number of people being unemployed is going to be a lot more. So further to this, what was also important was to see that those who were available to work, but they were either discouraged workers, that amounted to about 2.9 million, is that workers were actually discouraged, that they had poverty, but they were actually discouraged. This just shows that even giving a smile to someone where you don't know what their challenges or their battles are goes a long way. Speaking to someone or listening to someone, you don't have to give money, you don't have to give anything to them, but even the concept of you listening to what they need to say can go a long way in terms of flipping that aspect of encouragement or motivation so that they can have the willingness to go and work. Other than that, there were other reasons for not searching for work. So there were different reasons for why people were unemployed or not having different types of jobs. It wasn't just because there weren't availability of jobs or because the economy was worsening, but it also came from the person itself. There was a demotivation, they were discouraged from doing a certain amount of work, they were depressed or going through some sort of mental health issue. So humanitarianism in itself is also about giving that smile, offering that lending hand, listening to people when they have some stories, because when they go back to their home, no one can actually listen to what they need to say. So all of this kind of information is also important. Interestingly then, women occupied 1 in 3 managerial positions. And I think this is why we have such a strong stance towards female empowerment, which is important. And if we see here, we see that females which are occupied in different positions, in domestic workers, it's 97%. Clerks, technicians, professionals, it starts to come down. What we can see is that as we go down towards more of the skilled and graduated attributed professions, the number of women in these professions decrease, which provides a further impetus to upskill more women in these types of professions in order to flatten the curve, not just for the coronavirus, but to flatten the curve also as well with regards to the unemployment scale that we're currently experiencing. So the key question from these stats is, how can our lifestyles contribute towards these devastating stats in society? What kind of approach can we use? And one of the approaches that I'm obviously putting on the table is humanitarianism. Now, this picture that you see here is Mount Everest, and that is the peak of Mount Everest. And then we have Table Mountain. The question from this that I always ask students, or whenever I do talks, is what is the difference between these two mountains? And a lot of people will say the difference is that Mount Everest is higher and Table Mountain is lower, which is right. But the message between these mountains, the message in this slide is that the one mountain is obviously a lot more flatter. The other mountain is a lot more steeper. Now, people would think that it's a lot harder to get up Mount Everest as it is to get up Table Mountain. Those of you who have climbed up or hiked up Table Mountain will know that Table Mountain is a steep climb, whereas Mount Everest, depending on which summit you're at, it's a steep walk. So the difference between these two mountains, this is largely based on endurance because it takes more time, less effort. This takes less time, but more effort. So you are able to get up to Table Mountain in about 2 or 3 hours, but it will take you a lot more longer to get up to Mount Everest at the summit. So the message from this is that whether you're using an approach based on endurance or whether you're using an approach based on strength, there's no right or wrong approach. Your approach towards humanitarianism is completely up to you. And the basis is that we have to use it because in each context where we're living in, it can be South Africa, it can be abroad. The challenges that we're facing is going to be different and it's going to be complex. Okay, so the question is, if I'm talking about the 5% rule, and if you want to devote 1 hour, 12 minutes of your day to the community, how do you apply this 5% formula? Because we're also unique and we're also different in where we work and all the fields and all the disciplines that we're currently working in. So how do we actually apply this 5% formula? So it's very important to get a context of the problem. So what I tried to provide you with today was a very broad problem of the issue that we currently have in South Africa, and how South Africa could thrive through an approach called humanitarianism. So say, for example, your passion is children, so ECD, early childhood development, or your passion would be working with the elderly, or your passion is working with education. You've got to understand the context and provide a needs analysis for what the problem is and how your approach in terms of humanitarianism is going to be applied. Once you've got that context and the needs analysis, you have to align it with your passion or what your interest for a cause is. Okay, so it's very important to be passionate about a certain cause, because if the passion is not there, you'll start to see that your activity starts to simmer down. Once you have that passion and that cause, you can then boil it down and towards an outcome or a project. So at very large, sometimes we would do a project which will take a lot more effort, but sometimes we would just want to see an outcome. Did you help someone today? Did you help someone through this particular task? And a lot more of these outcomes, bigger outcomes, can lead to an actual project that you can do. So this is a possible way of how you can apply the 5% formula, is merging the context in a needs analysis with something that you're passionate about, and then bringing down that as a funnel approach towards an outcomes and project that you would like to disseminate in society. So for me, really, through my experiences working as a humanitarian, except as an academic, I've really experienced that we as a nation or as people have lost our humanity. We have put so much of emphasis on capitalism, on socialism, on communism and imperialism, and there's other more, but I hardly see anyone speak about humanitarianism. And humanitarianism is the premise where you would do certain things without expecting anything in return, and you would do certain things without the aspect or topic of money or any reward. And a number of these have some sort of aspects attached to that, whereas humanitarianism really has anything that is attached to it. So we are really at the bridge between money and those that are needing basic needs. So we are seeing in society that there is a huge divide between two different classes, and inequality is growing even wider. And it's very hard for those who want to be in both places, that they actually struggle from having a foot in each of those areas at the same time. All right, so the question is, where have we gone wrong in society? And one of the first things from a South African perspective, what I want to bring up is colonization. And colonization, as we know, has really affected us in certain ways. It has brought us a few things, but it has also taken away and it has really broadened the equality scale within South Africa. The other aspect is capitalism. And capitalism is something that has really been straight after that institution of colonization, where we have taken away a lot from the masses within South Africa. This is a graph that I want to show you, which speaks to industrial capitalism. And as you can see that in the late 1800s or in 1880, this is where capitalism had started, and it had a large increase as it went on. And capitalism continues to rise because there's a lot of emphasis being put on there in order for economies and GDPs to grow, in order to supply a lot of people and to help a lot of people through jobs or through different types of commodities. Thereafter, we also have found out a lot of corruption that has taken place. And it's unfortunate that we have very few people who are able to balance principles of integrity over the principles of wealth or capitalism. But then there's another C. So I'm talking about the different C's here. So we've got C for colonization, C for capitalism, and C for corruption. But the other C that I want to speak about is the C for community. And what has happened is that these three institutions have taken away from the community. When I talk about the community, I'm talking about the masses. I'm talking about the 30 million people that you saw in those previous slides who are undergoing poverty. What should have happened is that these three institutions should have contributed to the community, to those people who are really affected. But the problem is that we are really living in a corruption-rich world, or sometimes we even living in a selfish world, where we can think of ourselves as, why should I help someone else? Why should I not just focus on ourselves? And I was able to answer that question later on when I was doing more projects. And the answer to that question is that when you help someone who is in need, you are witnessing a positive transformation when you're helping them. And when you witness that positive transformation, In turn, it's creating a positive sense of fulfillment within you because you have witnessed a positive difference in their life. And by you witnessing a positive difference in their life, it's creating this positive self-fulfillment within you. It's also making a difference within your own life. Okay. And that's why humanitarianism is something that is selfless. It's not something where there's something in it for you. All right. We've got these bots trying to put forward certain things because they're obviously selfish and they're trying to put forward their own agenda. But with the humanitarianism approach, it's completely different. So we are currently staying in a corruption-rich world where people can access information anywhere, anytime, any day for free. The problem is when what you have is easily and freely available to everyone, it becomes worthless. So very similarly like a diamond, all right? A diamond is a rare commodity. If it was free and available to everyone, it would lose its worth, which means it wouldn't have that value stamp on such a commodity. So the key question is, what are the differentiating factors that you will offer that will positively affect society? What is the diamond that you will use that can really assist people? Each one of us have skills. Is it going to be education? Is it health? Is it sport? Is it sustainability? What kind of things will you use to really make a difference within society? So throughout the number of projects we've done, we started a NPO called the Humanitarians, which is a volunteer-based organization aimed to make a difference within different areas in society, which is health, education, sport, innovation, and sustainability. And we have done a number of projects going out, and we've learned that there are different people who would like to help. And so this is a proposed model that I want to put forward. And there's no right or wrong person, but it's just a model that we had come up with. So person A basically would say, I don't have to do good. I help many people on a daily basis. Our response to that is that there's no limit to any type of humanitarian activities. When you have the time, you'll do it. When you have the energy, you will provide it. Person B, I'll donate what I can and where I can be of help. Person C, this is quite common. I'll get rich first and then contribute to social change. Because if I'm rich, I can contribute. If I'm not rich, I can't. And I think we've learned that lesson is that you don't really need money to make a difference. You need time and you need energy. Person D, it's part of our core duties or occupational descriptions. At companies, we have to do community engagement, or we have to do a corporate social responsibility. It's part of our core duties, which is why we do it. Person E, I'll play the charity game so that I can uplift our brand instead of the other way around. So we'll give more for charity to show that we're doing good, but in fact, our brand is getting more leverage, which means we'll get more business. Instead of doing more business, where if you do have left, you will give towards charity. So it's about trying to balance that. How do you balance charity and business, which can often be something which is quite challenging to balance. So a response to persons B to persons E is that we have to move away from toxic charity, which is handouts. So sustainability is key. And an example is giving the homeless something to eat that you wouldn't eat. That is not social change because there's no human dignity in that. You want to provide them with sustenance, an idea, a tool that they can use for tomorrow. So say, for example, you have a really cool idea that you want to protect or that you want to file for a trademark or for an IP or for anything. But instead of keeping it to yourself, you give it to them so that they can use it and make a livelihood for themselves. That's something that is sustainable. But giving them something that you wouldn't use or giving them something that you wouldn't take that's not really social change. You're just helping them for that moment. And what you're actually doing is that you are fueling the poverty cycle, because if they can get something from you today, they're going to get something from someone else on another day. So the key word here is sustainability. What approaches are we going to use where it's going to have a sustainable approach? And that's very important. So the counter argument to this is, well, every bit helps. I mean, if I'm going to want to give someone food, surely that counts for something. And you're right, every bit helps. It's better than nothing. But the integrity and intentions of social change is very important. And just like oil and water do not mix, business and charity shouldn't. Business and social entrepreneurship could, but business and charity or social change shouldn't mix. And that's when we really start to question, is it capitalism? Is it socialism? Or is it in fact just humanitarianism? Okay. And then we have person F, who says, I'm a humanitarian, I love doing it, I will make time and effort. And there's a huge stance of posting certain things on social media, of a food hamper drive, or people that you've helped, or things that you've done. And the lesson from us is that we don't want to really post on social media what we've done, because the rule of thumb here is that what your right hand gives, your left hand mustn't know. And so 50% could be posted on social media to inspire others to do the same, but the other 50% should be anonymous. It should hardly be known. And the reality is that it's not charity if it's flaunted. And that's where we really need to ask the integrity and intentions of why we do social change, because that's really important. Charity is seen as the primary or the main objective for person F. And great example. And so irrespective of which persons you look at, the reason why we do humanitarianism is because it enhances our moral code. So beyond it creating a positive self-fulfillment from within, it's also enhancing our moral code. And that's why it's so important. So examples of person F are people like Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. Those are quite good examples of people who adopted the principle of person F. So in summary, there's no right or wrong person here. All of us need to identify which person we are, and irrespective of which person we are, we need to try and move towards person F, which would be the ideal approach. But contingency with this is, with person F, is time and energy. We can only give us so much that we have. And that's right, which comes back to my 5% rule. 1 hour, 12 minutes. And that's all it takes.